Woo! Hey, good morning. You're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. Karine Jean Piere, she gave her last press conference, folks. She gives her last press secretary performance, and this is really hilarious. She unironically quotes Joe Biden in one of his really derpy moments. It's like a senile moment that he had during the debate with Donald Trump, and she quotes one of these senile moments Joe Biden had in the debate. And she did this unironically. So I thought it was hilarious. I'm going to share that clip with you. Also, an LA Times owner, or the LA Times owner, is regretting endorsing Mayor Karen Bass. He says that it was a mistake, and he says that endorsements matter, competence matters when considering who you're going to be endorsing. So the LA Times owner is now saying that he made a mistake. The LA Times made a mistake when endorsing Mayor Karen Bass. We know Caruso is the guy that ran against her. We're going to get to what Caruso did with a private firefighting team. He kept this whole entire little village. This is a commercial village. It's like a mall. It's an outdoor mall looking thing. And Caruso, the guy who ran back in, I want to say it's 2022 against Mayor Karen Bass, and he was running up against her, and she was getting funding from Barack Obama, Barack Obama was funding candidates or funding groups against Caruso. So Barack Obama played a very crucial role in getting this woman elected, who is just a DEI hire, really, and just totally incompetent. Karen Bass. And now the LA Times owner is saying that we made a mistake and competence matters. Yeah, what a concept. We're going to get to a little bit more details coming out of that Eastland Mall story where somebody took a hammer and smashed up the glass there at the jewelry store, Rogers and Holland. So I've got more on that story. You can also now vote on the new state flag, folks. Yes, Illinois, we have serious issues, and that's evident by the mass exodus that's going on. And changing our flag, I'm sorry, Governor J.B. Pritzker, that's not going to fix anything. Property tax, fixing the property tax situation, that's going to keep Illinoisans here. But this new flag, it's literally unnecessarily spending taxpayer dollars, which is just ridiculous. So I voted this morning to keep the current flag. They're trying to change it. I think the worst one that I saw was the butterfly one. It's all blue, and then there's an orange butterfly. It's nothing says we are incompetent and weak like a butterfly, like an orange butterfly flag. So I don't know. Maybe that one wins. I wouldn't be surprised, considering all the liberals that live in the state. They'd want a flag that shows weakness. I love our current flag. It's a bald eagle. It's a pretty cool flag. So I voted this morning. I suggest you vote to keep our current flag. Why change it? It's not going to fix anything here in the state of Illinois. And in fact, it was all unnecessary spending of taxpayer dollars. We're going to get to all of that. But first, tell me, have you ever had a critter in your house before? So I'm going to share this with you guys real quick before I get to the news, because I woke up this morning and I am just so grateful that we got the squirrel out of the basement. Has this ever happened to you where a critter gets into your house? It tends to happen, I guess, a lot in the wintertime. They're trying to get warm. So we had an animal in our basement. And there's a foyer and some stairs, and the foyer and the stairs covered in droppings, covered in pee, and obviously it was something a little bit bigger. The droppings were slightly bigger than maybe mouse droppings, and I was like, what is in our basement? And it sounded so loud, it was clawing at the door, but I never really opened up the door to try to see where it was and what it was. I was like, is it a raccoon? And one day we have a little air freshener above our door, and then the door there's some stairs that go straight down into the basement. There's an air freshener above the door, and then this animal obviously knocked down this big old air freshener that was like structurally attached to the house. Now, the air freshener was there when we moved in. I didn't put it up there. So I'm kind of grateful because I didn't want that air freshener up there. The animal saved me, from having to get a chair and go and try to take this thing down. It was like structurally on the wall there. I don't know, like nailed to the wall, and it came down. So I was like, okay, something is really, really like big, and it's causing a lot of damage downstairs. There was insulation that was all ripped out. So we leave the door open. Okay, so it's okay to leave the door open. There's another door that goes into the kitchen directly. It's our side door here on the house. And we leave that door open, and we see fresh footprints in the snow. Okay, so fresh footprints. It was a blanket of nice white snow. We were like, okay, this is our shot. We're going to open the door, see if it goes out. We're going to check to see if there's tracks. We thought it was a bunny because of the hop marks. It looked like it had hopped. But then we look out in the front yard. There's a squirrel that's feverishly just ripping into the ground, trying to find some food. So we're thinking it was a squirrel. I have like a little laundry soap thing. So I make my own laundry soap. Sorry, I don't like the chemicals in Tide. So I make my own. And I've got like a little basket that I put it in. And it's got a plastic handle on it. And the plastic handle was chewed through. So this squirrel not only ripped out the insulation, it chewed through this like plastic handle. It went up and down our stairs and just littered the stairs with feces. And I am just so grateful this morning that I don't hear rustling downstairs. Like, it was loud. I could hear every time this animal moved. I was like, okay, there's something large down there. Turns out it was a little bitty squirrel, but squirrels can make a ton of noise. So give me a text, 309-451-9299. Let me know if you've ever had a critter. I thought you guys would get a kick out of that story. It's a real life story. I've never had a critter before like that in my house. I haven't had critters, like even mice, in my house for a long time. Since I've got 3 cats. And the whole mice situation, when you've got 3 cats, it just kind of never happens to you once you have cats. So you don't have to worry about the mice. They just avoid coming into the house entirely when you have cats. So this was like the first time I've had like a little critter in my house, and it freaked me out a little bit. I was like so confused. I thought it was one of these giant rats. And I was like, yeah, there's no way I'm going down into the basement until we figure out what's down there and we can get it out. I'm not going down there to find out. All right, let's get to the news. I want to start with Karine Jean Piere. I don't know what beat Medicare means. So it's unclear what that means. But Joe Biden said it during the debate with Donald Trump, and Karine Jean Piere here is repeating it. So Sleepy Joe said this slogan, beat Medicare. And like I said, I really don't know what it means. I have no clue what this actually means. Beat Medicare. Take a listen. Here we go.
As you asked me about this particular question, look, we were able to beat Medicare. That is something that this president was able to do. But as you asked me about.
Okay. So she says it there. This is her last press conference, and she says we were able to beat Medicare. Like I said, don't really know what that means. Here's what I'm referencing. This is Joe Biden's senile moment in the debate, and you'll hear Donald Trump talk about what he thinks beat Medicare actually means. Take a listen.
All those things we need to do: child care, elder care, making sure that we continue to strengthen our healthcare system, making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the COVID. With dealing with everything we have to do with. Look, if we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President Biden.
And that is the moment where they realized, we got to replace Joe Biden. We got to install a different Democrat nominee, insert Kamala Harris. Joe Biden attempted to debate Donald Trump. And I pulled this clip. You might recall that nonsense that he had stuttered about how he wanted or had beat Medicare. Like I said, Don't really know what that means. The world probably would have forgotten that Joe Biden stuttered this bad and had this weird slogan like beat Medicare, whatever that means, had not the DEI spokesperson open up her mouth and repeat his best lines. A senile moment. This is one of the worst senile moments I think Joe Biden has ever had. Donald Trump, let me actually play this clip one more time. Donald Trump talks about what he thinks beat Medicare actually is here. And he's exactly right. Beat Medicare to death. That's what Joe Biden means when he talks about beat Medicare to death, in that everybody's on Medicare, including the illegal immigrants that he allowed to come into the country. So take a listen to Donald Trump here. Here we go. Let me fast forward this a little bit.
Dealing with everything we have to do with, look, if we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump?
Well, he's right. He did beat Medicare. He beat it to death, and he's destroying Medicare because all of these people are coming in. They're putting them on Medicare. They're putting them on
All those things we need to do.
Yeah, so I almost forgot how bad this performance was until I looked up this video and I rewatched this clip of him repeating this or having the slogan. I mean, he came up with the slogan, beat Medicare. Yeah, beating Medicare to death. Joe Biden is destroying Medicare by putting a bunch of people on Medicare who are not citizens. Okay, so at least Joe Biden is, he's got this whole senile defense where, he just says things and he opens up his mouth and he really doesn't know what's going on, and he lost his train of thought and he came up with the slogan in the moment of his train of thought being lost. Karine Jean Piere is objectively stupid, and she repeated this nonsense like it meant something. Okay, so it's possible, folks, it's possible that both these buffoons, Joe Biden and Karine Jean Piere, this is their pathetic attempt to, refer to their pathetic attempt of negotiating drug prices. It still sounds like a bit of a stretch. We beat Medicare by negotiating drug prices. And like I said, it was a pathetic attempt to negotiate drug prices. But these clowns, all they have to do is keep their mouths shut. Every time you open your mouth, you struggle to put basic sentences together every single time. And, that's what happens when you're dealing with arrogant people who think that they're all that in a bag of chips. Okay, Joe Biden's going to open his mouth, although he knows, he's most likely been informed that he has dementia and is senile, but he's going to still open his mouth and still act like he's not dementia riddled and senile, because he's arrogant. He's arrogant. He's a terrible person. Also makes jokes at the worst time. He's done that for 40 plus years in politics. That's nothing new, where he makes really distasteful jokes. Again, like I said, it's unclear what he actually meant by beat Medicare. And it's unclear if Donald Trump will beat Medicare like Joe Biden claimed he did. But his inauguration, Donald Trump's inauguration, is less than 6 days away. And I don't know about you, but I am so excited. And I'm excited that we don't have to listen to DEI pick Karine Jean Piere ever again. And we don't have to listen to arrogant Joe Biden coming up with slogans that make no sense. All right, I got to take a quick break. But you're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. Hey, good morning, Sue. Appreciate you tuning in. Good morning, Lisa. Come on, young lady. You know damn well what Medicare on prescription, beat Medicare on prescription costs and cost of insulin. You know this. Do I? Because he didn't. I mean, that's the thing about, leftists here, Dan. I'm sorry, but that's the thing about leftists. Like, I'll play it for you again. I don't know what the hell this guy was talking about during the debate. And clearly it's not just me who says that. It's the Democrat Party, after this debate, installed a new Democratic nominee. Okay. So you've got Joe Biden here.
All those things we need to do, child care, elder care, making sure that we continue to strengthen our healthcare system, making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the with the COVID. Excuse me, with dealing with everything we have to do with. Look, if we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President Biden.
Okay. I don't know how he jumped there. He was talking about people with COVID. He was talking about, I mean, I don't know what a solitary person, a single solitary person. Childcare, elder care. Like he clearly was jumping around. And I mean, if you think that you can make sense of this Bidenese, this new language, good for you. But Dan, I'm telling you right now, I don't think anybody knows what he was talking about right there. I don't even think Joe Biden knows what he was talking about right there. And it's clear, it's evident. Fast forward to 2025, we know what happened. Joe Biden was senile. He's got dementia. He's got something wrong with his brain. That's why they installed Kamala Harris. It's not me who says that, he comes up with these weird slogans. I mean, maybe you could make the argument that both of these buffoons, Karine Jean Piere and Joe Biden, they were trying to talk about the negotiating of drug prices, their pathetic attempt of negotiating drug prices. Perhaps that's what they're talking about. I don't know, because he jumped from talking about COVID to beating Medicare, and he didn't explain what that actually means. So Donald Trump, he goes, beat Medicare. He goes, it must mean, you beat Medicare to death, and that you had a bunch of people who are, people who need Medicare, people who are on Medicare right now in this country, they're not getting the most out of it because that system is being drained by people who Joe Biden has let in, by Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris let these people in via this open border. So I am going to get to LA Times owner. His name is Patrick Soon-Shiong. He is the LA Times owner, and he endorsed Karen Bass, the mayor. And like I said, here we go. It's not me saying that these Democrats are incompetent or senile and come up with a weird slogan like beat Medicare and nobody really knows what it means. It's not me who says that these people are incompetent. It's the LA Times owner who says Karen Bass, the mayor, is incompetent at this point. Their own Democratic Party, the whole Democratic Party said, Joe Biden after that debate, too senile to even work with it. We're just going to get somebody else in there, and we're going to install our own nominee who hasn't run in a primary, and we're going to do the most undemocratic election ever in history. So it's not just me saying that Joe Biden doesn't make sense. It's not just me saying that Karen Bass is incompetent. Democrats, the LA Times owner, is by no means conservative or a conservative cat type, okay? He is a leftist, a rabid leftist, and he said, quote, it's a mistake for his paper to have endorsed Karen Bass, the mayor of LA, and he says that competent people should be elected, not professional politicians. So there you go, folks. That's what we're talking about here. We're going to be right back. Smash that like button. Share this out with your friends. We're going to be back for our radio friends. But I do also want to get to Rick Caruso. Rick Caruso ran against the LA mayor. And like the professional politician she is, she got the help of big money bags, Barack Obama. And they, funded all of these campaigns against Rick Caruso, which ultimately led to his failure. But get this, Rick Caruso, this is very interesting. He saved one of the very few commercial structures in the middle of Palisades. So Palisades completely burnt down to the ground. There's one little section of Palisades that is not burnt down. And who had a part in that? That was Rick Caruso, who hired a private firefighting service. And this private firefighting service kept the Palisades Village Mall open and undamaged. They took the private firefighting service out there, and they made it to where this commercial structure, it's like I would say like it's an outdoor mall. It's still standing in the middle of Palisades. So that's a leader right there. Karen Bass, not so much. Hey, good morning, Sudu. Appreciate you tuning in each and every single morning. Read one of these comments here. He says, "Come on, Kat. You know darn well that he means beat Medicare on prescription costs and the cost of insulin. You know this." Okay, first of all, Trump lowered that. By the way, it was Donald Trump's policy which lowered insulin. And just ask anybody with diabetes. Ask anybody with diabetes. The Trump administration initially lowered it, then Biden reversed it, and then put his name on it, and then he lowered it. But only after reversing Trump's policy, and then he lowered it. Okay, so that's what happened, commenter. Number one. Number two, I don't know if you heard the same clip I did, but Joe Biden made absolutely no sense in that debate. And it's not just me saying that. Okay. The Democrat Party knew Joe Biden didn't make any sense during that debate. So their response to that debate and their response to Joe Biden's senile moment, I would say that the entire debate was a senile moment for Joe Biden. After that debate, they installed Kamala Harris as the new Democrat nominee. In the most undemocratic election ever. She didn't go through a primary or anything, and they were willing to do that because Joe Biden was that senile and that confused during the debate. It was abysmal. So it's not just me, saying that this beat Medicare slogan doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. And the Democrats responded to Joe Biden not making any sense by installing their favorite DEI pick. The second favorite DEI pick is Karine Jean Piere, but their first favorite DEI pick is Kamala Harris, and that's why they installed her as the Democrat nominee. It's not just me saying that the mayor of Los Angeles is incompetent. Okay, now we have the Los Angeles Times, this newspaper. They endorsed the Los Angeles back in 2022 Mayor Karen Bass. Now the owner of Los Angeles Times is saying that he regrets that decision. His name is Patrick Soon-Shiong, and he said it was a mistake to endorse Karen Bass, and he says that competent people should be elected, not professional politicians. No, she's a professional politician because she got big old money bags, and this is what politicians do. Professional politicians like the Jim Rogels and the McLean County Board, they find a dark money group that's funded by the Tides Foundation, and they just have money funneling into their campaign coffers, and they win elections because they know how money moves, and they're professional politicians. We should be hiring. That's what it is. It's electing people. You're hiring them, and you're the boss. Okay, in the election, whoever you select, you're hiring them, and we should hire people who are competent. Take a listen to the LA Times owner and how he's now regretting his choice of endorsing Karen Bass. Here we go.
First of all, we'll accept some blame, right? So at the LA Times, we endorse Karen Bass. I think right now in front, that's a mistake, and we admit that. So I thought it was very important early on for me to come out. And I think we were one of the few to say competence matters. We got maybe 20, 23 million views to show how that was really dear to the heart of most people, whether you're right or left. And it's an interesting thing is that maybe we should think about how we elect people on the basis of, did they actually run a job? Did they actually make a payroll? Do they understand what it is? And rather than having professional politicians whose only job is really to run for office. There's nothing, I'm not trying to be disparaging, but I think we're at the stage now of the nation and the world, and there's many things we'll talk about even in healthcare, that you really need people to understand how it affects the man in the street, how it affects the working type of person. And I think President Trump in this election has understood that, and he's become truly a Republican Party, as you said, has become the Democratic Party in terms of addressing the problems of the man in the street. So competence absolutely matters, and I'm glad that that's been taken up as almost a meme now, that competence matters.
Competence matters. So that's the LA Times owner. And let's break this down. I'm glad that people are waking up and that this, is now a bright idea people are having, but this shouldn't be some sort of profound concept. This is nothing new. We should be hiring based off merit. We shouldn't be installing people into Democratic positions here like Kamala Harris just because of their skin color, insignificant birth rates, female. We shouldn't be hiring people in the LA Fire Department just because there's lesbians. There's 3 lesbians, as I covered yesterday, in the LA Fire Department, all named like a variation of Kristen. And I'm going to be honest with you. I would love to see the proof that these ladies could carry out somebody from a fire. I doubt it. Okay. And that's not hiring based on your professional skills and competence. That's hiring somebody based off of insignificant preferences in the bedroom. Okay, so let's break it down. They endorsed her not because they thought that she was competent, but because she was a good politician. He admits that in this clip, okay? You cannot make this level of nonsense up. They actually openly admitted that she was a good politician and we should be endorsing people, and he says it was a mistake, who are competent. We should be endorsing people who are competent and have actually done something with their life, made a payroll, worked in the private sector. And I know that we have a Bloomington mayoral election coming up. And one thing that I can say about pretty much all candidates anymore in the state of Illinois, and it's that they're all, they've never experienced the private sector. Cody Hendricks, who's running for Bloomington mayor, he openly admits in all of his commercials that he's been serving Bloomington as a public servant his entire life, like literally graduated and then went right into the public sector, hasn't worked in the private sector really. Do you really want somebody like that representing you, somebody who's never really worked a day in their life and they don't understand how to make a payroll, what it means to run a business? Well, it's better late than never. Now we have people actually realizing that this is a complete insanity. DEI hiring or electing progressive politicians who are just good at being politicians and never really working in the private sector. While I'm grateful that it's happening finally and that there's some light going on and people are starting to see the light, he did admit that they did vote based on or they didn't endorse her based on the fact that she was a good politician, and that they did not endorse her based on who would better represent the people, which tells you all you really need to know about the LA Times. Okay, so we are at a point where some people couldn't care less if they, vote against their best interest. And I hope that those people wake up, especially with these wildfires, as so long as they're, sticking with the politically correct candidate, the candidate who is been in the public sector all their life and hasn't made any kind of waves. As long as you stick with the politically correct candidate, then, they're just going to keep voting that way. And you've got people who could care less, and they don't want to vote in their best interest. However, that decision, obviously in LA, led to many, many people losing their homes, schools, and lives. Okay, so I want to talk about Rick Caruso. Voting in your best interest. He was able to save one of the very few commercial structures in the middle of Palisades. So Palisades is completely burned to the ground at this point. And he actually saved this little mall. It's a Palisades Village Mall. And it was developed by Rick Caruso. He's a developer. And this is one of the only commercial structures that are still standing. And it's in the center of Palisades. And how did he do this? He hired a private firefighting service. He hired a private firefighting service and deployed water tankers. And it's just utterly embarrassing for Democrats running Los Angeles, the fact that you've got Rick Caruso, who ran against Karen Bass, out there saving this little commercial property with private firefighters. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about that. I've got the video. It's kind of eerie because you look at the commercial property here of Rick Caruso's, the guy that ran against Karen Bass in 2022. Barack Obama helped Karen Bass win and Rick Caruso lose. Now you've got this like commercial structure standing, and then all surrounding it just rubble, ash. So it's embarrassing for these Democrats who are running the Los Angeles mayoral office. They're running the fire department. I'm going to be right back talking a little bit about that here next on Conservative Cat. Hey, good morning. Go ahead and smash that like button, share those out with your friends. We are going to be chatting a little bit about Karen Bass and her incompetence. She actually decided to take a trip to Africa. And, I don't think that Rick Caruso did that. Let's take a look here. That you guys are really going to get a kick out of this. This is Rick Caruso's. Now, he's a developer. This is all his. I guess he's a really rich guy. And that's the thing, too, is they'll try to tell you that rich people are somebody you should fear. No, rich people, rich candidates, they tried to do this with Darren Bailey, say that he was a millionaire or whatever. Look, there's a big difference between getting your millions through the private sector and then getting your millions through the public sector and having these shadow nonprofit organizations or these dark money organizations funnel money into your campaign coffers. There's a big difference between making your way and being successful in the private sector and then going into the public sector, not working a day in your life and getting all kinds of money funneled into your campaign coffers. Okay, big difference. Let's take a look at this. You guys are going to see this and your jaws are going to drop. This is the Palisades Village Mall. Like I said, Rick Caruso is a developer, a very successful developer. You're going to see this and you're going to be like, wow, he must have millions. I haven't looked up his net worth, but look at this. Okay, everywhere else is just burned down to the ground in Palisades. This is in the center of Palisades. He took private firefighters and he took these tanker trucks full of water and he saved. Look at all the water on the ground. He saved this entire area.
Oh, this is his own water trucks.
Yep.
This is what leadership looks like right here. If anything catches on fire, those water tanks are right there and they're going to put out that fire right away. And then you drive out. Look at the burn. Look at the devastation.
Wow.
Look
Everything
at all the
on,
water.
oh my
here.
gosh,
It
everything
stopped
on
the fire
Monument.
from coming over to the commercial area there. So, I mean, number one, pretty impressive that he's a successful developer and has developed this little village or this village mall in Palisades. Number two, this is what real leadership looks like. He knew the risk. So he didn't go and take a little safari trip to Africa, okay, unlike Karen Bass. So what did he do? He took matters into his own hands and he took accountability. And that's something people in the public sector just don't understand, accountability, because you're taking all of the risk in the private sector. Because remember, people in the public sector, they don't have to sell a product. They don't have to make anything or do anything. They just have to take taxpayer dollars. They just have to be professional politicians to get those nonprofit organizations to funnel money into their accounts every year or every election cycle. And they're going to be just fine. Then they're paid, a taxpayer salary. And they don't have to risk anything. That's why there's such good leadership. And when you pull from the private sector, you've got career politicians running in your Bloomington mayoral race. I'm sorry, Bloomington. You've got professional politicians and people who don't understand risks that you have to take in the private sector. So while residents, they refuse to elect somebody like Rick Caruso here, who took matters into his own hands, and he knew the risks. He knew he had to do something about it, and he saved this little community here. And that shows competence, okay? And people are refusing to elect Rick Caruso, who is competent. They go for the DEI pick of the mayor. Okay, that's what they went for. They went for the professional politician, and unfortunately, things didn't go well. And regardless of who the residents voted for, the entire situation is extremely sad. I'm not blaming it on these people. I mean, it's unfortunate that they suffer from Stockholm syndrome. No one should have their home lost, business, life, or their pet. That being said, we can almost be certain that this this wildfire issue is going to be on the ballot in Los Angeles. These are top issues that are going to be thought about when people go into the ballot booth. We're going to get to this plus more here in the coming hour. At the top of the hour, I do want to talk a little bit about this burglary at Rogers and Holland Jewelry Store. You guys remember what the Bloomington police did. They, of course, put out a statement that wasn't really helpful after people had mistaken this robbery for a shooting, mistakenly called it a shooting on social media. And then they said, you're causing unnecessary fear and confusion by sharing posts without verifying information, just totally uncalled for from the Bloomington police. Huge problems with that statement. And I'm going to get to three problems with that statement, three major problems. BLN News, they've got way more developments than I've seen locally. So they've got the story here, blnnews.com. Check it out. I'm back. Woohoo! Hey, good morning. You're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. Like I said before I took the break, Rick Caruso, the guy who ran against Mayor Bass, Karen, Mayor Karen, back in 2022, Barack Obama had a hand in his failure and Karen Bass's success. The LA Times had a hand in Karen Bass's success as she was endorsed by them. Now the LA Times owner is regretting that choice and said that we should be endorsing based on competence. This screams competence, okay? Rick Caruso, he's a developer, and he's got this Village Mall, Palisades Village Mall. This is the only thing in Palisades that is not burnt down to the ground. He hired a private firefighting service, and you guys can check it out online. Here it is. This is... I'm on YouTube. You guys can watch the video. It's very cool visually, but I'm going to explain what's going on in the video here. This is in the center of Palisades, the place that's been burnt down to the ground. Like I said, he hired a private firefighting service and he deployed water tankers. And it's just embarrassing at this point. This is embarrassing because this is what real leadership looks like. So you've got somebody driving through this mall. It looks like an outdoor mall, and you've got tankers, like water tankers. These are huge semi trucks full of water. There's water all over the
water
ground.
Trucks. Yep.
And they're driving through, and you get to the end of the road here, right as you get outside of the village here, the village of Palisades, this little commercial property. There's multiple buildings, multiple stores, and then you get to the edge here, and you can see all of the devastation and the water on the ground, which prohibited the wildfire from jumping to this little
everything on
here of Rick Caruso's. So meanwhile, you've got Karen Bass fleeing, the state of California, going to Africa on some sort of trip, some sort of voyage, and meanwhile, you got Rick Caruso taking matters into his own hands. He knew that there was a risk, and he knew he had to do something about it. So he got private firefighters in there and made sure that his development didn't go up in flames. That is leadership. I do want to shift gears. Let's talk about the story from BLN News. Guys, go check it out, blnnews.com. This is more developments from the Eastland Mall story that I had provided yesterday. The Bloomington police, they issued a statement talking about how they responded to a report of a burglary there. Somebody called 911. And then they talked about how, originally, social media users, they circulated social media posts that had suggested that there was a shooter, and they mistook the shooter or the robbery for a mass shooter. And here's why. He had a hammer, And the mall is very echoey. If you've ever been to the Eastland Mall, it's empty, like most malls. And he smashed the glass at Rogers and Holland jewelry store. Now, this wasn't a burglary, as BLN News says. It was a robbery. Yeah, well, it sounds like it. Now, the Bloomington police haven't issued any kind of information as to whether this was a robbery. They said that they responded to a report of a burglary. They didn't say that there was an arrest made. They didn't say that there was a suspect, nothing. But here's the big difference between robbery and burglary. Burglary, you kind of break into somewhere and you don't necessarily have direct contact with victims. Now, according to comments on the statement released on the Bloomington Facebook page, a couple of the commenters who were there at Rogers and Holland, and the one who made the individual who made the 911 call, actually said that this guy smashed and saw it happen, where smashed the glass case 8 times and stole some things. Okay, now that, by definition, if somebody saw it and there was direct contact with this victim, then that, by definition, is a robbery, and they didn't call it that. They called it a burglary. They said that they responded to a report of a burglary. A burglary is a break-in when nobody is around. Nobody is around. A robbery is much different. And the press release, I mean, I don't know about you. If you're going to be accusing people of making false claims, these people who happen to be civilians, victims of crime, victims are allowed to be wrong. They were in a heightened state of emotion, obviously, because they were in this mall and they heard popping sounds. Your head is going to jump naturally to the worst case scenario, somebody has a gun, right? The press release should have stated that it was a smash and grab. There is a picture, photo evidence on blnnews.com. So this is, and now you have, not only victims commenting on the Bloomington social media page saying what happened, but you also have pictures. So clearly smash and grab. And instead they said nothing in the statement about a smash and grab, about a hammer, nothing. Instead, they decided to tell citizens who are paying their salaries, by the way, to sit down, shut up on social media. And, there was nothing here that's like super, super top secret, I don't think, right? This is a smash and grab. The police knew that there were no shots fired in the press release, and they should have described why people thought there was gunfire. This was a great opportunity for them to show the cooperation between the public and the police and the authorities, and to share that information. Why was that not included? Why was the hammer not included in the press release? Why was no description of the assailant or of the burglar? I guess I've got to call him burglar because he's not a robber, but really it's a robbing, right? Robbery by definition. If this is what clearly, we've got pictures. We've got people who are coming out and saying that they saw him smash the glass 8 times. Rogers and Holland employees are saying that. So they didn't provide any kind of description in this press release, which could have led to the suspect being caught quickly. They didn't describe how he fled the scene. Some say BLN News says they have heard that it was a bicycle that he hopped on. Obviously this was terrifying for anybody in the mall that day. But what's really concerning is Bloomington police, they had an opportunity here to reassure citizens and instill confidence in their ability to find the culprit. And they didn't do that. They didn't reassure citizens. These citizens almost were blamed for thinking that it was a gun going off. And why? Why would you blame victims of the crime and say that they caused unnecessary fear by, spreading false claims? They were false. Not saying that they weren't false. Glad that Bloomington police clarified that in this press release, but they could have clarified even more. Was there a suspect? What was it that made people believe that this was gunshots going off? They did not reassure the public, and that's really sad. Rogers and Harlan, they have security cameras, and I hope that the police are using them to try to find this guy. And retailers should be on heightened alert. That's if I was a retailer in the Bloomington area, I would be concerned about somebody wielding a hammer going around robbing places. There is a no guns allowed sign. Perhaps they should also put a no hammers allowed sign. See if that works. And that's how, it doesn't matter. Criminals are going to be criminals. They're going to bring in hammers. They're going to bring in guns. It doesn't matter. Criminals don't obey laws. And they will not think twice about putting shoppers or civilians in defenseless situations or endangering the public. They don't think twice about it. Why? Because they're criminals. So, like I said, I wish that they would have provided more accurate information if it was known. And the police and all levels of government, they need to understand that they don't control information anymore. We have social media. People will go to social media and they will provide information. Now, if they want accurate information out there, then they've got to be more transparent in their releases. And when they come out with the information, they've got to come correct and with as much information as possible. Instead, the Bloomington police took this as an opportunity to accuse people of, or not accuse, I mean, to shame people for spreading false claims, which in the moment, you as a victim, you're naturally going to think gunshots. I mean, in a heightened state where people are running around saying there's gunfire, you're going to naturally think that. And that's just victim 101, cop 101. In a heightened state of emotion, you're going to get some things wrong. This was an opportunity for the police to correct the record and to come really correct, but they didn't do that. They didn't provide any information except that, yes, there was no gunfire. But what did happen? What caused people to believe that? All right, I am going to take a quick break. You're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk Bloomington Normal. Mark Zuckerberg dropping a bombshell on the Joe Rogan podcast. He says that the Biden administration would call up people at Meta and cuss at them and scream at them and ordered them to censor people. So we're going to discuss that here next on Conservative Cat Cities 92.9. Good morning. So do appreciate it. Let's get to this. Sounds like Trump did what Trump did with Veterans Choice. It was Barack Obama's plan. Trump reversed it and then started again and put his name on it. I will admit that Trump made Veterans Choice a better plan. However, you will also see Veterans Choice put closer to being able to do away with the veteran system and just provide, just use private care, which is absolutely terrible. But watch if Doug Collins gets in there. That's what's going to be an attempt. I don't know what you're saying, dude. Let's see here if I can understand. Trump has done more for veterans than any current Democrat ever will or has or will do. All right, this all started because of the and here's the thing. You didn't come correct, Dan, so your credibility has dissipated. Okay, you don't have any kind of credibility here because you came incorrect. You said, this is their way of saying that they beat Medicare as a slogan that they used to say that they were bringing down prescription drug cost and prices of insulin and things like that. Now, if you ask people with diabetes who actually lowered the drug cost of insulin, they're going to say Donald Trump. It was lowered under Donald Trump, and then they raised it, and then they lowered it again, Joe Biden, and then he slapped his name on it, okay? So whatever you're saying here about the veterans, which I can't really put together, and I have no idea what you're talking about here, but I'll look into it. But I guarantee that's not what happened here. I think you even admit it here. You say, now I will admit Trump made Veterans Choice a better plan. So, it was Obama's plan. Then he reversed it and then started it up again and made it better. So that's not the same exact policy. Whereas this policy with the commercial or with the drug prices, insulin and lowering the cost of insulin. And then what Joe Biden did, he literally took away Trump's policy, reinstated Trump's policy, and then put his name on it. Like there was no additions, anything like that. Now this, I'd imagine that Donald Trump did make it better, as you admit here. And that would be effectively a different policy. If he made it better, it'd be a different policy. If he reversed Barack Obama's policy surrounding veterans, I don't know what policy you're exactly talking about here, but it looks like you admitted yourself that Trump made Veterans Choice a better plan or a better program. I don't know what that exact plan is. I'll have to look into it, but you yourself even admit in this comment here that it's not the same plan. Whereas Joe Biden, he took Donald Trump's policy, got rid of it, and then reinstated it, and then put his name on it. Okay, so that is completely different than removing a Barack Obama policy, removing it, changing it, making it better, using your words. You said that it's a better plan, and then putting your name on it. Totally different. So, yeah. And the fact that you came incorrect in the first place and you accused me of not knowing what beat Medicare, which isn't even what they did. Donald Trump beat Medicare, if you want to use that slogan or whatever that slogan actually means. I don't think that Joe Biden knew what he was saying when he said beat Medicare. I really don't. I think he was having a senile moment. And I think Karine Jean Piere just repeated this slogan unironically. And this is probably one of the slogans or one of the senile moments that actually caused Joe Biden to lose the nomination, the Democratic nomination. They installed Kamala Harris shortly after that debate. So, yeah. I'm going to be right back. You're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. Good morning. At the top of the hour, we're going to be talking about Mark Zuckerberg. Yeah, so I have a big problem with people who don't stand up against tyrants, okay? The only problem with tyrants censoring information is that, that's a problem. So it's a huge problem when you have tyrants censoring information, and Mark Zuckerberg, he's on this Joe Rogan podcast, and I guess on this podcast, he talked about, his pastimes where he likes to hog hunt and stuff like that. Joe Rogan, I've never really liked the Joe Rogan podcast. It personifies Mark Zuckerberg, and really what needs to happen is Mark Zuckerberg needs to be behind bars for what he did prior to the Biden administration even getting in. Okay, so I'm going to get to that here at the top of the hour. Find me on YouTube. We'll continue with more content there. Find me on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, and we'll be back at the top of the hour here at 7:05 is when I come back, and we'll be talking about Mark Zuckerberg, and I've got a clip to play from the Joe Rogan podcast. Okay, so folks, enjoy your coffee this morning. 6 days to go, 6 days to go until Donald Trump is our president. Coffee is great this morning. Yes, it feels good to be on the winning side. Dan is just dying to be right about something this morning. I don't know. I'm sorry, Dan. Like, I really appreciate you being here, but you gotta come back. You gotta come back with accuracy. You gotta come back strong. In your own comment here, it seems like, and I don't know, I'd have to do some research. I don't know anything to do, or I don't have any idea about what this Veterans Choice plan is, and if it was a Barack Obama plan and then Trump came in and reversed it and started it back up again. But you actually just admitted it here. You said, I will admit Trump made Veterans Choice a better plan. So that's not implementing the same exact plan like Joe Biden did. He implemented the same exact plan that Donald Trump did and threw his name on it. He reversed it and then implemented it again, okay, for the prescription drug prices, insulin. Talk to anybody with diabetes, really, to know what happened with the prices of insulin. They'll tell you they reached like record lows under the Trump administration, and then they got high for a period of time, and then they came back down. And Joe Biden is the entire administration is known for plagiarizing. What was it? I think it was. Oh, I want to say it was Ketanji Brown Jackson. There's somebody who was under fire for plagiarizing. I think it was it Kamala Harris? I don't know. There was some DEI hire who was accused of plagiarizing, and I would not be shocked. I mean, that's what Joe Biden did here, plagiarized. All right, now let's talk about Mark Zuckerberg. I want to get to this. They solely target speech that threatens their narrative. Okay, Facebook, back then Twitter, now it's X. Twitter did this where they solely targeted speech that didn't fit the narrative, the Democrats' narrative, that is. Subsequently, big tech decided to become the arbiters of truth, despite never being elected to roles, and despite being a platform. Like I said, there's a big difference between publisher and platform. When you're a publisher, there are certain laws you have to follow, and you're held liable under the law for many different things. As a platform, you get protections, and you won't be held liable under the law for many different things. And you get special treatment, really. I mean, I'll say it's special treatment, rightfully so, if you're acting as a platform. Okay, but if you're acting as a publisher, where you are deciding what gets in, what gets out, or what's in and what's out, what gets posted, what doesn't get posted, what's promoted, what's throttled on social media, you're acting as a publisher, which means that you need to be held liable under the law for the way publishers are. Publishers, so for example, the Washington Post, they can get sued for defamation if they come out with incorrect facts. And if they, say they printed something, actually this happened, they printed something about me. She actually changed her story after I complained about it. I didn't go after her for defamation or anything. She said that I had called myself QAnon or something like that, and I was self-identified as QAnon, which is not what I said. I looked at the liberal Washington Post reporter while she was interviewing me, and I told her, and she asked me if I was QAnon, and I said, ma'am, I'm as QAnon as much as you are BlueAnon, right? And then she printed that I self-identified as QAnon, which isn't true. So, well, it could be, but that would mean she's also, suggesting that she is BlueAnon. Okay, so she changed that part of the Washington Post article she wrote about me, but publishers, my point here is, if they print something false or verifiably false, then they can be sued for defamation. Now, if there's something verifiably false on a platform, Facebook can't get sued for that kind of stuff because they're considered a platform. So if they are, say somebody on social media says something blatantly false about their neighbor or something, right? My neighbor killed somebody, for example, and accused them of being a killer, and they're not actually, and they weren't convicted of that, okay? Then Facebook can't be sued for allowing it on the platform. The person being accused by that can sue the individual who published that on Facebook, but Facebook can't be sued by allowing that to stay on the platform because they are not publishers. They're not the ones who are supposed to go through and censor that kind of stuff, or take that kind of stuff out, or put certain stuff in. Washington Post, they're a publisher. They can be held liable under the law for that. So they get special protections. But if they're going to act like a publisher, then they should be treated like a publisher. If there is false information, then they should be able to be sued for that false information. For example, the censoring of individuals saying that ivermectin didn't help against COVID-19. If those individuals put put out there that ivermectin didn't help with COVID-19. It is now approved FDA drug for the treatment of COVID-19. But if they took somebody off the internet because they said that ivermectin helped, which was me, by the way, I said that ivermectin helped with COVID-19, and they took that person off the internet, that is acting like a publisher. So Mark Zuckerberg, like I said, he went on the Joe Rogan podcast. He claimed that the Biden administration bullied him to engage in mass censorship, which is just ridiculous because, number one, he was engaging in mass censorship prior to the Biden administration even getting into office. It was in 2020. They're trying to personify him here and give him a personality here on the Joe Rogan podcast. And like I said, I've not been a fan of the Joe Rogan podcast. I'm not even really a fan of Joe Rogan. I know that's a hot take, but I don't like this whole, let's give Mark Zuckerberg a pass for doing this. Really, if he wants to remedy this, he should be censoring leftists now. Hey, good morning. You're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. Before I took the break, I was telling you a little bit about Mark Zuckerberg being on the Joe Rogan podcast, and he says that the Biden administration, they screamed, they cursed at me, and they screamed and cursed at me to censor people. Okay, so we're going to get to that. He dropped this bombshell on the Joe Rogan podcast. We're also going to get to Governor Gavin Newsom. He launches this very Orwellian website to fact check anybody who points out his incompetence. The Normal Fire Department tried to do that as well. They tried to fact check. They were like, hey, you know, these wildfires are just too big to be fighting on the ground, which I don't know if I necessarily even believe that anymore, considering what just came out about Rick Caruso, who fought the fires on the ground, and he had his own private firefighting company come in and fight the fires on the ground, and they saved his commercial property there, the Palisades Village Mall. So I don't necessarily know if I believe that anymore, but okay, sure, the fires are too big to be fighting on the ground. You need like a helicopter or something, and you can't fly the helicopters because the winds are too high. Okay, I understand all that. However, let's talk about Governor Gavin Newsom. Let's talk about Karen Bass and what decisions they've made that led up to this point where this massive wildfire was able to happen. Okay, let's talk about that, Normal Fire Department. Let's talk about that, Governor Gavin Newsom. So it's really bothering me that we've got all these fact checkers out there who are trying to run really interference for the people who are very, very incompetent, and their incompetence is what led to these wildfires. And that can be, I mean, proven. Not 5 years, people have been saying that this was going to happen. This massive wildfire was going to happen, and it was going to burn LA down to the ground. And people have been predicting this since 2019. Donald Trump predicted it 3 months before he won the presidency. Okay, we're 6 days away, by the way, until Inauguration Day. Woohoo! I do want to get to this. It's a story out of UK. A migrant rapist. Yes, this is heavy lifting. It's totally tragic. This migrant rapist avoids deportation. Why? Well, he claims, one, he didn't know the law. And this is the biggest problem with multiculturalism. Multiculturalism is the belief that all cultures are equal and some cultures are not better than others. This guy in the UK claimed that he didn't know that raping somebody was wrong. He's from, I think it was like Jamaica or something like that, and he's avoiding deportation. He says that he's bisexual, and he said, to be honest with you, I didn't know that having sex with somebody who was sleeping and totally unaware of what was happening, or raping somebody, I didn't know that was wrong, because in my culture, that's not wrong. In other cultures, you know, some Middle Eastern cultures, they believe that it's not wrong to rape women. They believe that child marriages are not wrong. Okay, so multiculturalism, anytime you hear that word, condemn it, say, nope, that is very, very wrong. Multiculturalism is the belief that all cultures are equal and some cultures are not better than others. The American culture is better than a culture that says that child marriages are okay. Here in America, child marriages are a big no-no. You cannot do that. In some places and in some cultures, you can marry children. That is wrong. So we're going to get to this migrant rapist avoiding deportation, claiming that he's bisexual. He gets out of it because he says, I'm bisexual. They'll kill me in my country if I'm bisexual, so I have to stay here. So he avoids deportation. So we're going to get to all of that here in the 7 o'clock hour. Let's talk about Mark Zuckerberg. Mark Zuckerberg, he censored information prior to the Biden administration getting in, by the way. Okay. Big tech, they decided that they were the arbiters of truth, despite never being elected in those roles, despite not even being a publisher. Big difference between a publisher and a platform. Platforms, you can't get sued for things like defamation or for things like lying. So I gave the example, say you accuse your neighbor of being a killer on the internet on Facebook. Okay. You write up a Facebook post and you say, my neighbor is a killer, never convicted, never even arrested, right, for killing anybody. And you just throw that out on social media. You cannot sue Facebook for allowing that to stay up. Say you're this neighbor who's been wildly accused of being a killer by this other guy. You can't go sue Facebook. You can go sue the guy, but you can't go sue Facebook because it's a platform, and under the law, you can't do that. Now, say that were to all happen in the Washington Post. Washington Post accuses somebody of being a killer and says Jane Doe is a killer, right? She is a killer. And if they print that and she's not actually a convicted killer, then they will be sued. Washington Post will be sued for defamation because they printed it. So they have protections under the law as a platform, and that means they cannot be censoring information because of those protections they have and are insured. That means that they have to act as a platform, which means they don't get to choose what is on or off of their platform. Mark Zuckerberg, he went on the Joe Rogan podcast. He claimed that the Biden administration essentially bullied them to engage in mass censorship, and I'm not buying it, folks. Take a listen.
These people from the Biden administration would call up our team and scream at them and curse, and it's like these documents it's all kind of out there.
Did you record any of those phone calls?
I don't think we but I think
I want to listen.
I mean, there are emails. the emails are published. It's all kind of out there, and they're like, and basically it just got to this point where we were like, no, we're not gonna take down things that are true. That's ridiculous. They wanted us to take down this meme of Leonardo DiCaprio looking at a TV talking about how 10 years from now or something, you're going to see an ad that says, okay, if you took a COVID vaccine, you're eligible for, for this kind of payment, this sort of class action lawsuit type meme. And they're like, no, you have to take that down. And we just said, no, we're not going to take down humor and satire. We're not going to take down things that are true. And then at some point, I guess, I don't know, it flipped a bit. I mean, Biden, when he gave some statement at some point, I don't know if it was a press conference or to some journalists, where he basically was like, these guys are killing people. And I don't know, then all these different agencies and branches of government basically just started investigating, coming after our company. It was brutal. It was brutal.
Okay. So, in other words, Mark Zuckerberg was in charge of a company that engaged in mass censorship, breaking really the law as a platform. You're supposed to be operating as a platform. You've gotten all this extra protection under the law because you're a platform, but you're not acting like a platform. He engaged in mass censorship of Americans. I was in Facebook jail for several months, wasn't able to use my Facebook account or use features on my Facebook account. I couldn't go live on my Facebook. Obviously, that's detrimental because of the nature of my job, right? He engaged in mass censorship, and he's only sorry now because Donald Trump is going to be in office and is almost in office. 6 more days, folks. Do with that information as you will. He says, yeah, well, we, all of a sudden it kind of switched on us, and then they started really screaming, cursing at us to engage in this censorship. It's unclear what he would have said had Kamala Harris gotten in and had Kamala Harris won the election. But I think we all know the answer. Had Kamala Harris won, he would not be saying what he's saying on the Joe Rogan podcast right now. And I'm really disappointed in conservatives. Conservatives are saying, oh, Mark Zuckerberg is one of us. We're so back. No. Mark Zuckerberg is doing what he can to save his own butt, to kiss butt, so that way he doesn't get prosecuted, because what he did was break the law. You can't censor people. Question: did the Biden administration also pressure Facebook and Meta to ban Trump's account, or was that their idea? Because from what I understand, they banned Trump's account prior to Joe Biden even taking office. Okay, they banned his account. It's rather weird. That happened before Joe Biden took office. You guys remember the Hunter Biden laptop story? You guys remember that? That was before Joe Biden took office, and they were censoring that story on Meta. So additionally, I don't think we should be forgetting the $350 million of Zuckerberg grants. Remember those things? It's called Zuckerbucks during the 2020 election. So according to the Heritage Foundation, and don't forget, McLean County, they actually took some of these grants, by the way. Don't forget that. But here's from the Heritage Foundation. Here's what they said. It's been about a year since the Chicago-based Center for Tech and Civic Life, which doled out $350 million in Zuckerberg grants, Zuckerbucks, launched the U.S. Alliance for Election Excellence. U.S. Alliance for Election Excellence. Okay, they launched this program, a 5-year, $80 billion project. The Center for Tech and Civic Life, the CTCL, is a partnership with other organizations, including one funded by a far-left political funder, Arabella Advisors. Okay, so this is all lefties. All of these CTCL, Chicago-based CTCL. You've got the U.S. Alliance for Election Excellence. That was a leftist program. You've got CTCL in partnership with many different organizations, but they were funded by CTCL. They're funded by Arabella Advisors, which is a far-left political funder. But the alliance, which is primarily CTCL's operation, was faced and has faced lots of skepticism. Okay, so Zuckerberg said the grants were going to election offices to deal with the pandemic, and that the money was supposed to be used for personal protective equipment like face masks and Germ-X, right? Yeah. Tell me that this isn't adding up. $350 million for face masks and Germ-X? Give me a break. Further, he gave $350 million to an organization clearly identified as left-leaning, CTCL, left-leaning. They are funded by Arabella Advisors. The Center for Tech and Civic Life is mostly funded by left-of-center donors such as Democracy Fund, John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, and the Rockefeller Brothers Foundation, okay? So that's what we're talking about here, a far-left organization receiving money from Democrat donors. Zuckerbucks went to this Chicago-based, Zuckerbucks were doled out to this Chicago-based Center for Tech and Civic Life. I know it's confusing, but I mean, this is face skepticism, and people, opponents will say, and I'll just tell you what it is, municipalities or election offices that accepted Zuckerbucks have been accused of election fraud and swaying the election. And, it's the way the Democrats were buying, off these election offices. That's what people say about Zuckerbucks. It's faced a lot of skepticism. $350 million, like I said, for face masks and Germ-X, give me a break. For Wisconsin, Zuckerberg grants, Zuckerbucks, were divided almost entirely among Democrat strongholds. So a lot of these grants went over to, purple counties or purple election offices or Democrat strongholds. The State House of Representatives appointed former Wisconsin Supreme Court Justice Michael Gableman as special counsel, and he determined that the state's grants are used as impermissible and partisan get out the vote efforts. Okay, so it's not just me. Like I said, it's not just me saying, oh, these Zuckerbucks clearly swayed elections or clearly were given to offices, Democrat strongholds to protect their, blue status, or given to purple counties, purple election offices. to sway the election one way or another. It's a Wisconsin Supreme Court Justice, look him up, Michael Gableman, appointed as special counsel, and he determined that the state's grants were used as impermissible and partisan get out the vote efforts. So like I said, you've got Mark Zuckerberg here, and that's great. Awesome. He's, coming out against the Biden administration and saying that, and he's blaming it all on the Biden administration. But he decided to do all that with the Zuckerberg grants, by the way. He decided to do all that. Did Joe Biden, did the administration also demand from Zuckerberg to dole out all of these grants to these election offices that were predominantly blue and gave them to left-wing organizations, these dollars, the $350 million for this $80 billion project? I mean, come on. Was that all from the Biden administration as well? Are we supposed to forget that this is a platform that engaged in censorship prior to the Biden administration Biden ever being elected? Facebook censored the Hunter Biden laptop story before Trump lost. And according to polls, 80% think that this would have changed the outcome. So nearly 80% of people think that they would have changed their vote had they known about that story. So clearly, not Zuckerberg bucks aside. Okay, Zuckerberg grants aside. I think this was election interference, censoring that Hunter Biden laptop story. But hey, at least he admitted he's wrong now, I guess. Good for Mark Zuckerberg. No, this guy is a jackwagon who is only doing this because he wants to protect his company and he wants to avoid jail time, which I'm sure if we dug into this, we'd see that he broke many, many, many laws. All right, I do have to take a quick break. You're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9. Look up Zuckerberg bucks. Look up the Zuckerberg grants. They're Zuckerbucks, right? You guys remember the story where, he doled out $350 million to an organization that's clearly left-leaning, and this organization funded, of course, this $80 million and put that money towards an $80 billion with B dollar project. And this was all a far-left political project. And, Zuckerberg said that the grants were supposed to help election offices deal with the pandemic for like personal protective equipment. $350 million. You really mean to tell me that's, everybody had their own masks already. People were buying, really, for election, you need one jug of Germ-X and you need one box of face masks. You mean to tell me $350 million went to that? No, these were, as the Wisconsin, the Zuckerberg grants were divided almost entirely among Democrat strongholds. So there were certain election offices who got these dollars. The State House of Representatives appointed Wisconsin Supreme Court Justice Michael Gableman as special counsel over this, to determine, hey, was this election interference? Here's what Michael Gableman said. He said that the grants were used as impermissible, quote, impermissible and partisan get out the vote efforts. So Zuckerbucks, look this up. And I'm sorry, but I don't think that the Biden administration forced Mark Zuckerberg to do that. This was prior to Joe Biden even getting in. Much like the Hunter Biden laptop being censored, that was prior to Joe Biden getting in. And, it's really just unfortunate that people are buying into this new Zuckerberg just because he's, smoking a joint with Joe Rogan on his podcast. And they're talking about, martial arts and they're talking about hog hunting. It's really kind of tragic that people are that duped by, this guy's personality. Like I said, I think Mark Zuckerberg, and maybe he is having a change of heart. I do think that people can have a change of heart. However, just because you've had a change of heart and you now know and acknowledge this was all wrong, mass censorship was wrong, election interference is wrong. Now that Joe or Donald Trump is coming in, and you've admitted that. I think the timing is interesting here as well, folks. But I think that people can change 100%, and maybe he is changing, which is great. But that doesn't mean that you avoid consequences for your actions. So he still should be held accountable under the law. Mass censorship, he broke probably all kinds of laws. There should be a deep dive investigation into Zuckerberg grants that were given to election offices, $350 million. There should be a full-blown investigation into that. When we come back, we are going to be talking about Governor Gavin Newsom. I want to get to this story. Governor Gavin Newsom launched a new website to try to gaslight people about misinformation regarding the Los Angeles wildfires. I talked about this a lot yesterday because the normal fire department, they came out and, accused individuals of spreading misinformation, saying that the fire department, the LA fire department, should be fighting these fires on the ground. But that's impossible, and that no system exists to fight these fires on the ground. I don't even know if I really believe that anymore, considering what just happened with Rick Caruso. Rick Caruso, he hired private firefighters to go out and save this village of Palisades, which is a small little commercial development of his, and he saved his own private or his commercial development out there, the Palisades Village Mall. This is like an outlet mall, like a outdoor mall. And I don't know if I necessarily believe that they can't fight this on the ground because Rick Caruso just didn't, and I'm watching it with my eyes. People fighting it on the ground. So if a private firefighter company can do it, why can't the public one do it? You know what I mean? So we're going to get to Gavin Newsom. He launched this new website, and it's very Orwellian. It's very weird. Smash that like button for me if you can. Hey, good morning. So do appreciate you tuning in each and every single morning. Go ahead and smash that like button. Share this out with your friends. We are talking a little bit about, Mark Zuckerberg. You guys remember the Zuckerbucks, the grants that went to these election offices, and he said it was to deal with the pandemic. But, you've got all of this money going to, he says it was supposed to go to, personal protective equipment, but almost none of the money went towards personal protective equipment. Did he engage in election interference? I think yes. There has to be a deeper dive into the Zuckerbucks and the grants. And, it's a very complicated issue because the money is just funneling from far left organization to far left organization to far left organization. So it's kind of hard to follow the money. But you've got the Zuckerbucks issue. And then you've also got this Wisconsin Supreme Court judge who was, assigned as special counsel to review the Zuckerbucks situation. He said, and he determined that the state's grants were used as, quote, impermissible and partisan get out the vote efforts. So Michael Gableman, look it up, Wisconsin Supreme Court. He was assigned as special counsel to this case regarding the Zuckerberg grants. And he said, and so it's not just me, he said that it was these monies were used as partisan get out the vote efforts. And, this all happened prior to the Biden administration. You've got Mark Zuckerberg now saying that, the Biden administration, they screamed, they cussed at us to censor people, and that's why we did it. No. You started censoring people prior to Joe Biden even getting in. Okay, you censored the Hunter Biden laptop story, which I do believe was engaging in election interference, because we now know that I think it's like nearly 80% of people say that they would have changed the outcome of the election had that story been out. People said that they would have changed their vote had that story been out about the Hunter Biden laptop story. And, he's admitting now that that was wrong to censor Americans. I can't help but look at the timing. It's probably because Donald Trump is coming in and he doesn't want to face prosecution, because this is prosecution level consequences he's looking at here, folks. He broke laws. We have laws about censorship, about how he needs to act as a platform, not a publisher. Meta has to be a platform, not a publisher, and they skirted really the law and what they're supposed to be by definition under the law, which is a platform. So he should not be evading consequences. And I don't care if he's had a change of heart, and I don't care if he is actually sorry. He really needs to be prosecuted, and we need to look into remedies for what happened. You were censoring conservatives for so long. If you really want to remedy the situation, perhaps you should throttle leftist content. If you really want to remedy a mistake, that's what you're going to have to do, because all those conservatives, some people create content and it's their livelihood. Okay. Some people need their Facebook page. And if you were a conservative, your Facebook page was throttled and in some cases shut down and you were thrown in Facebook jail. And that it was an attack on your pursuit of happiness. That was an attack on your prosperity, and that needs to be remedied. And really, I think it's Zuckerberg sitting behind bars. So I want to get to Governor Gavin Newsom. He launched this website, and he's gaslighting the public into thinking that what Donald Trump said in a social media post is misinformation. One social media post is enough for people to understand the situation here in LA. Donald Trump made one social media post about how Governor Gavin Newsom didn't sign a water restoration declaration because he wanted to protect the Delta smelt. And that's what caused the whole state to dry up, the state of California to dry up. And that's why we've got a wildfire that's gotten out of control. And there is also this abysmal fire response as well. So Gavin Newsom, his response to, of course, Donald Trump's social media post accusing him of all of this is, of course, to create a website, likely with taxpayer dollars. I haven't looked into how much this costed the taxpayer, but this website, he launched it to defend his abysmal fire response. Governor Gavin Newsom launched a website to gaslight the public about misinformation regarding Los Angeles wildfires. One of his claims is that California did not defund the fire department, which is a lie. We can prove it. Newsweek by no means is a conservative news outlet, by the way. They published it. Newsom on X, he says, a lot of misinformation out there. Man, this is kind of reminiscent of the normal fire department, the post that they made about the misinformation. Just launched a new site to ensure the public has access to fact-based data around the Southern California wildfires. The truth, this is what he says on X, Governor Gavin Newsom. California did not cut our firefighting budget. We're going to get to that here in just a second. We have nearly doubled the size of our firefighting army and built the world's largest aerial firefighting fleet. California has increased forest management tenfold since we took office. This is hilarious. California will not allow for looting. And then he goes, get the facts. And then he posts CaliforniaFireFacts.com. This is absolutely incredible. Now, this is all in response because it took one social media post on Truth Social from Donald Trump to get people to open up their eyes to what actually caused these wildfires. So now he's playing defense. He's on defense mode, and he's launched this website. Here's the post-millennial. This initiative comes as Newsom faces sharp criticism for his handling of the ongoing fires, which Newsom has pushed back against. Okay, so he's pushed back against this criticism. He hasn't owned it like a man and said, yes, I've made mistakes, but we're going to fix this. Newsom's office accused the California General Assembly, like the California Assembly of Republicans, of promoting flat-out false and misleading information after they claimed that the governor had cut funding for fire prevention by 80% since 2021. The governor's office also claimed that the California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection's budget has almost doubled since Newsom took office in 2019. A report by Newsweek, okay, like I said, not a conservative outlet. Post-millennial is a conservative outlet. Newsweek added to the controversy, revealing that the 2024-2025 state budget signed by Governor Gavin Newsom included a $100 million reduction in wildfire and forest resilience funding. Okay, so he reduced the funding dedicated to the forest preservation and wildfire response. He reduced it in the 2024-2025 budget, despite there being an overall increase to the budget. Okay, so they're spending more money than ever, but they decreased the $101 million. It was a reduction for wildfire and forest resilience funding. Newsom dismissed these reports as a ridiculous lie. Not true. Look up the state budgets. Look up 2024-2025 state budget, and then look at the old one, 2023-2024 state budget. You will see the difference. $101 million reduced from the wildfire forest resilience funding. So rather than doing everything he can to at least pretend to care, right? Going out there and, whatever it is, feeding victims of the fires, bagging up food, pretending, right? Just pretend. He's actually going out on podcasts, he's creating websites, and he's running like a PR damage control. If you're going to do PR damage control, just go out there and pretend to care. Like, grab a hose, put on a firefighter hat. I think that would be almost better than you going out and getting on a podcast for 3 hours. 3 hours. What would be the reaction if Donald Trump did this? He got out onto a podcast and was on this podcast for 3 whole hours. So it's this Pod Save America podcast. So I'm going to be right back. We're going to play a little bit of Gavin Newsom on this podcast. That's not what real leaders do. They don't take 3 hours out of their day and then go on a podcast and run this PR damage control. They don't take taxpayer dollars to, I'm sure it's taxpayer funded, CaliforniaFireFacts.com, and launch a website as a defense against Donald Trump's social media post, which is all accurate, by the way. I've talked about the Delta smelt. I've talked about Governor Gavin Newsom diverting water in order to protect the habitats of these Delta smelts. I've talked about that. I've talked about how the Joe Biden administration outlawed controlled burns. I've talked about how Karen Bass defunded at a local level, not just a state level. Did they reduce funds for wildfire and forest resilience funding? State level, they reduced it by $101 million after, he signed this budget for 2025. He reduced it. But in LA, $17 million. Locally, they defunded this after Karen Bass had gotten in as mayor. She reduced the budget for the firefighter department. Or the fire department, and then also sent equipment over to Ukraine back in 2023, I think it was. They sent equipment, helmets, fire engines, all of that over to Ukraine. So we're going to be right back. You're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9. How many fire trucks were held up for emissions checks? I thought that was it. Wasn't that crazy? You saw that yesterday? So it was DOT, and that's what they call them. And really what this is probably emissions checks to check and see what the carbon emissions are out of these fire trucks. So I saw this. It was like 60 fire trucks were held up for DOT checks, Department of Transportation checks. Now, I thought that this was interesting. I was like, I bet it's emissions. They're going to be looking at the emission checks on the fire trucks to see how much emission is going to be released by these fire trucks. Typical green liberal thinking, adding to yet another fail. Smoke everywhere. What's you've got smoke literally everywhere, carbon, right? Emissions. But yet you're going to make it a priority to check the carbon emissions of the fire trucks coming in. So the DOT, there was a line of fire trucks. I think it was like 60 fire trucks or so. Smash that like button, by the way. Subscribe to the channel. There were like 60 fire trucks lined up, and they were doing DOT checks. I didn't know. I didn't look into California's DOT checks and what that all entails. But yes, I was betting that it was the emissions, that they were probably checking to see how much emissions these fire trucks were releasing, despite, you've got, of course, the smoke everywhere. So we're going to take a listen to this on the podcast. This is a 2-minute long clip. This is Pod Save America, I guess, that Gavin Newsom was on. And he was on this podcast for 3 hours, and really he's doing like a PR campaign. I don't know where he found the time to do this, considering his entire state's on fire practically, but take a listen.
One of my best friends just lost his house in the Palisades. He just moved in a couple months ago, was able to get his 2 kids and his dogs, and that was it, lost everything else. He texted me the investigation announcement and said, what's going on here? Is he just trying to pass the blame? Your point about the finger pointing and the blame, so many people are so angry. How do you see that in a moment like this when you're trying to figure out, A, you're governor of the largest state in the country, and what happens in LA isn't always going to, come across your desk, but also you're ultimately responsible as the governor of the state.
Of course. I want to know the answers. So I'm the governor of California. I want to know the answer. I've got that question. I can't tell you about how many people, what happened. My own team saying what happened. And I want to get the answers. And I'll be candid with you, I wasn't getting straight answers.
Yeah.
I watched the press conference. I met with some of those leaders. We had my team start talking to local leaders saying what's going on. Our state.
And you weren't getting straight answers from
I was getting
leaders.
different answers. When you start getting different answers, then I'm not getting the actual story. And they're assessing it. And I get that as well. You have to a little bit of grace, back to the point. We're in this emergency environment and everything else. So I just want to determine the facts. But no one has any patience anymore. In this weaponized, back to the grievance of Trump, everyone else, there's immediacy. And lies travel the proverbial world. And it's hard to get the facts out there unless you have backing of those facts and you can communicate them soberly. And so that's what we're trying to achieve as relates to this. But I have 10 other things we're doing concurrently as well. I mean, across the board on recovery, disaster assistance, getting the major disaster declaration. It may be the first one in U.S. history over a text with the White House within literally 36 hours to get 100% reimbursement for folks out here. We've been working concurrently in all of these areas. We're doing executive orders as I speak as it relates to recovery and land use, dealing with speculation and fraud, and trying to address issues on the Coastal Commission here and address the issue of planning permits and how we address all of the myriad of needs for small businesses, all of this in real time. Again, as the state, even though this is not a state responsibility, are to support the city and the county that are overwhelmed at this moment.
Oh, that was annoying to watch. What do you think the reaction would be if Donald Trump took 3 hours out and decided to go on a podcast while you had cities burning across America, right? What do you think the reaction would be if Donald Trump did something like this? This is not what real leaders do. Okay, real leaders do what Rick Caruso did. They hired private firefighting companies to go out there and prevent further fire damage to his commercial property. Now, he had a special interest in this because it was his commercial property, the Palisades Village Mall. But that's what real leaders do. They take action, they take the bull by the horns, and they say, you know what, we're going to fix this, and I'm going to take accountability over my own life. I'm not going to wait for the public sector to respond. We're back. You're listening to Conservative Cat. Woohoo! Hey, this is a leftist podcast, Pod Save America. Okay, by the way, I'm going to replay this really quick because I think it's so important. You've got Governor Gavin Newsom finding 3 hours to go on a podcast. What do you think the reaction would be if Donald Trump did this? A little bit later in the show, I do want to get to this migrant who was convicted of raping a woman in her sleep. This happened in the UK. But guess what? He's going to avoid deportation. Why? Because he's bisexual, and he says that his life would be allegedly in danger if he were to be deported back to Jamaica. And the migrant who raped this sleeping woman in the UK is avoiding deportation because he says he's a member of the LGBTQ ABCDEFG plus community. This guy was 41 years old. He was sentenced actually 7 years in a British jail in 2018, but he was released in 2021. And then he went out and then he raped this sleeping woman. He raped this sleeping woman and was in jail for since 2018, but he was released in 2021, and there's been a deportation, a deportation order. Yeah, a deportation order. And he's not going to be deported because he's bisexual. And, quote, he didn't know that raping somebody was wrong or considered bad in the UK. So when people say multiculturalism is a good thing, remember what multiculturalism actually is. Multiculturalism is saying that all cultures are equally the same, and there's not one culture that's better than the other. I don't know about you, but cultures that suggest that raping or child marriages are okay, I don't like those cultures, and multiculturalism is stupid. So there are better cultures out there than the ones that say child marriages are okay and raping people is okay. I do want to get to this. This is Pod Save America. Gavin Newsom was on it. He found 3 hours out of his day to be on this liberal podcast. Take a listen.
One of my best friends just lost his house in the Palisades. He just moved in a couple months ago. Was able to get his 2 kids and his dogs, and that was it. Lost everything else. He texted me the investigation announcement and said, "What's going on here? Is he just trying to pass the blame?" Your point about the finger pointing and the blame. So many people are so angry. How do you see that in a moment like this when you're trying to figure out, A, you're governor of the largest state in the country, and what happens in LA isn't always going to, come across your desk, but also you're ultimately responsible as the governor of the state.
Of course. I want to know the answers. So I'm the governor of California. I want to know the answer. I've got that question. I can't tell you about how many people, what happened. My own team saying what happened, and I want to get the answers. And I'll be candid with you, wasn't getting straight answers.
Yeah.
I watched the press conference. I met with some of those leaders. We had my team start talking to local leaders, saying what's going on. Our state,
and you weren't getting straight answers. From
I was getting
leaders.
Different answers. When you start getting different answers, then I'm not getting the actual story. And they're assessing it. And I get that as well. You have to, a little bit of grace, back to the point. We're in this emergency environment and everything else. So I just want to determine the facts. But no one has any patience anymore. In this weaponized, back to the grievance of Trump, everyone else, there's immediacy. And lies travel the proverbial world. And it's hard to get the facts out there unless you have backing of those facts and you can communicate them soberly. And so that's what we're trying to achieve as relates to this. But I have 10 other things we're doing concurrently as well. I mean, across the board on recovery, disaster assistance, getting the major disaster declaration. It may be the first one in U.S. history over a text with the White House within literally 36 hours to get 100% reimbursement for folks out here. We've been working concurrently in all of these areas. We're doing executive orders as I speak as it relates to recovery and land use, dealing with speculation and fraud, and trying to address issues on the Coastal Commission here and address the issue of planning permits and how we address all of the myriad of needs for small businesses, all of this in real time.
Okay, so I want to be clear about something here. When he's talking about recovery efforts, he actually got what he wanted. He said it out loud, folks. This 2028 project has been a dream of California's. They want to rebuild like this 15-minute looking city. And they want to build like this super big liberal city, and they just want probably to start from scratch. And now I might sound conspiratorial, but this is probably, never let a good crisis go to waste kind of deal, where they're going to just build over and they're going to, take a bunch of money and build this 2028, 2030 plan that they had wanted to do, and now they don't have to worry about the demolition because it's already demolished, so they don't have to start from scratch because there's already it's already been demolished for their 2028 city. Look it up. Look up the plan, the California plan. Take a listen.
Again, as the state, even though this is not a state responsibility, are to support the city and the county that are overwhelmed at this moment.
Okay. So I wanted to share that with you, but I also want to share this with you. Here is a tweet by Governor Gavin Newsom. He says, "Stop encouraging looting by lying and telling people it's decriminalized. It's not. It's illegal. It always has been. Bad actors will be arrested and prosecuted." Now here's some context for you. California actually reduced the penalties for theft crimes, including looting, to a misdemeanor if it's under $950. If it's under $950, it's a misdemeanor with Prop 47. And in 2020 or in 2013, Governor Gavin Newsom supported all that. So in 2024, voters repealed much of that with Prop 36. Proposition 36. Governor Gavin Newsom campaigned against Proposition 36, which reinstated higher penalties for people who stole things under $950. Okay, so those are the facts. It's net misdemeanor. You get a slap on the wrist, if you steal things that are under $950 in the state of California. So no one believes this nonsense anymore. This launch of this website, the California Fire Facts website that he launched, nobody believes you anymore, Governor Gavin Newsom. And it's getting pretty exhausting because this is exactly why you lost the election. People realize you are the problem. And he does not care about doing what's best for his state so long that he remains politically correct. And, it's not surprising that he blamed Donald Trump, and he says that Donald Trump is the problem with the California wildfires, which actually makes no sense. But I really don't care because guess what, Gavin? Your legacy is this: homelessness, wildfires, and a theft epidemic in California. The numbers don't lie. That's what you're dealing with there. Homeless crisis, and then a theft crisis. People steal things in California all of the time. So I'm going to be right back. You're listening to Conservative Cat. We're going to wrap up the show with this migrant in the UK who's avoiding deportation after he raped a woman. I'll be right back. Hey, go ahead, hit that like button. Smash that like button right now. Subscribe to the channel. Let me actually look that up. I'm going to look that up right now. Hold on one second. The California Project 2028, where they want to implement like a green weenie city and like it's a liberal city, and now they don't have to worry about the demolition and building that city. In the plan of building that city, it's already demolished, so now all they have to focus on is the recovery efforts. So this is like never let a good crisis go to waste. They're going to build their dream, their liberal dream city. I'll be right back. Okay, found it. Don't know if you guys like ChatGPT, but I love ChatGPT. I just, ChatGPT this real quick. I want to share this with you. Here we go. By 2028, by 2028, California is likely to see the continued evolution of smart cities with advanced infrastructure, things like AI, things like big data analytics. Cities such as San Francisco, Los Angeles, San Diego have been at the forefront of incorporating smart city solutions, focusing on sustainability, transportation, energy management, and urban planning. So smart cities, really what this is, it's a George Soros city. Smart transportation, self-driving cars, electric vehicle charging stations, and smart traffic management systems. Sustainability, green energy solutions, water conservation, waste management. Public safety and health, AI-powered surveillance. Yep, real time. So there's been talk about these smart cities and what they're actually going to do. You'll have AI in like your houses or like your apartment building, and if you look like you might need a healthcare visit, AI will suggest that you need to go. AI surveillance will suggest you need to go and utilize some healthcare services. Like these smart cities are really, really creepy. And now with these fires, they're going to have a much a better time implementing these smart cities because you don't have to demo anything. It's already been demolished. Okay. So, I mean, everything in Los Angeles is completely ash at this point. Smart lockdown city. Yeah. So you don't go anywhere. That's the whole point of these, is that you don't go anywhere. And the government is like, from cradle to grave is like your best friend and is instrumental in your day-to-day life, like where you go to the grocery store, how you travel, how you go about your daily life. And it's all going to be surveilled. There's going to be like traffic cams everywhere. This is like a really dystopian, like think dystopian city where the government knows everything about you. That's what they're going to probably implement now with the recovery efforts. And as you heard Gavin Newsom talk about in that podcast, with one text, Joe Biden, approved all of these recovery programs. And really what this is, it's, Gavin Newsom building out the smart city that he so desperately wants. I'll be back. Let's talk about the migrant in UK. Okay, this is some heavy lifting, but it's so important that you know that this is what's going on in the UK. And I always say file this under pay attention, America. So this migrant from the UK, he was convicted of raping a woman in her sleep, and he's allowed to stay in the UK after claiming he was bisexual and that his life would actually be in danger if he was deported back to Jamaica. Okay, so this is just so disgusting. The US or UK residents are being treated like second-class citizens in their own country. You raped a woman, okay? And I don't, sure, okay, your life is in danger due to your sexual preferences. You go to Jamaica and your life is in danger. Now, why do you care, UK, if his life is in danger, considering the fact that he raped a sleeping woman? Like, I don't care if you're bisexual and you're going to Jamaica and your life is in danger at that point. Not my problem. You raped somebody. Okay, so he gets to avoid deportation because he claimed that he was part of the LGBTQ ABCDEFG community. This 41-year-old man, he was sentenced to 7 years in a British jail in 2018, but he was released in 2021. And he claims that he didn't know having sex with a woman who was sleeping was wrong. And that's what he called it. He said having sex with a woman. He didn't think that it was wrong. And this is the problem with multiculturalism. There are cultures that believe that women, there are cultures where they believe that women can be raped at any time. There are cultures that believe that child marriages are okay. There are cultures, like he says, in Jamaica, where they'll kill you for being bisexual. Not all cultures are great, okay? Not all cultures are equal. There are some cultures that are better than others, and I would say that America has the best culture. And, he was given a deportation order after he was released in 2021, which doesn't make any sense to me because that math is not mathing. He was sentenced to 7 years, 2018 to 2021. 2019, 2020, 2021, 3 years. Why didn't you serve the whole 7? I don't understand. But he was being deported, but this deportation order he has evaded. So I don't know. I would think at least, certain laws like rape, assault, at the bare minimum, those should definitely come with a deportation status, right? If you commit those crimes, you should definitely be deported. Now this happened in the UK, but this is just, it's wild. As long as you claim, certain sexual preference, then you evade deportation. What? The man, he was granted an anonymous status for his own protection, so I don't know what his name was or is, and he was sentenced 7 years in jail in 2018 for the rape at a party. So he was at a party and he raped this girl who was sleeping. He was released in 2021, and the Home Office branded him, like the people who were in charge of the deportation order, they branded him as a danger to the community. That's why they were deporting him. But guess what? He's evading deportation because he's gay. And I guess they get special rights if you're gay. And they're really mocking citizens into oblivion with this. And I don't think that there is any more evidence to prove that these officials in the UK despise their own citizens. They're willing to do anything as long as it's politically correct. They could care less about putting their citizens in danger. All right, you guys have a blessed day. Bye-bye. We'll do it all over again tomorrow with The Daily Show, bright and early at 6 a.m. Find me on YouTube. Subscribe. It's The Conservative Cat Show. Type it in your search bar. Bye-bye. I love you. Be blessed. We'll be back.